A while back I mentioned that I'd seen the film A Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood and that I absolutely loved it and I wanted to make a video on it. The thing is, it's difficult to make a straightforward video analysing the film because a lot of what happens is based on truth. Obviously they changed the character of Lloyd Vogel quite a bit, but a lot of what Fred Rogers says as Tom Hanks in the film is stuff the real Fred Rogers said in real life. So I decided to do two videos, one where I looked at the real Fred Rogers and just reacted to real clips of him because I think that could be more interesting and more genuine. So that's one video I'm going to record sometime soon. The other one, this video, is less a straight up analysis than me talking about something interesting the film made me think about. There was a Simon Mayer interview with Tom Hanks where the film got described a bit like Dickens' A Christmas Carol in the sense that it stars a cynical man, Lloyd Vogel, who's known for writing very scathing dissection style articles that dig really deep into the minds of the people he interviews, pulling out all their dirt and their darkness. Which is similar to Scrooge, who has this deep conviction that people are basically horrible and selfish and cruel deep down, and that the world is a cold place as told through the idea of Christmas. Scrooge has a whole philosophy about it. And as we all basically know, Scrooge gets visited by three ghosts that help him to look at life from a different perspective, to notice that's not necessarily the truth, And there's a beautiful moment as shown here in the BBC production of A Christmas Carol where Scrooge slips on the ice near the end, only for an old lady to come out and apologise because she was meaning to sprinkle gravel on the ice, only she forgot with it being Christmas. And Scrooge says,
"Everything in life is a lesson you care to learn. The sprinkling of gravel on ice is an action taken by a person for the benefit of others without expectation of any reward of any kind. A whole new philosophy on human nature, encapsulated in a handful of gravel."
Scrooge learns that maybe human beings aren't just cruel and selfish at their core. He learns a new philosophy on human nature. And Lloyd Vogel isn't visited by ghosts. Instead, he visits Fred Rogers, interviews him. He's determined to dig deep into the darkness behind this man because surely the TV character is a persona. Surely he's not that nice in real life. That's not how human nature works as far as Lloyd sees it. Except Fred Rogers is that nice. Not just in the film, but in real life. He devoted his life to kindness and compassion in a way that almost feels superhuman, but it's not. It's as ordinary and human as human can be. That's what Lloyd learns. Maybe all this time he spent deliberately seeking out the darkness in others could have been spent recognising the light. And it's this idea of finding the worst in others that's basically what I want to talk about. This obsession with trying to expose other people's worst sides in place of showing any attention to anything positive. Because why should Lloyd want to pull Fred Rogers down? This good man that so many children look up to, why is he determined to expose some darker side to him, publicise it in the paper, the shocking truth about Mr. Rogers type thing? Even Lloyd's wife tells him,
"Please, don't ruin my childhood."
But Lloyd tries to, and it's not uncommon that any of us try to do that because, like Lloyd, a lot of people did find and probably still do have a very cynical view of the real Mr. Rogers. The channel Fact Fiend did a video on this exact point, that many people were surprised to find out Mr. Rogers was actually as nice as he seemed. What does that say about us? That we'd be more shocked to discover a nice man was actually a nice man, rather than if he'd just been putting it on. It's an odd approach to life that we're looking for the very worst in the very best of people. I imagine had some small moment occurred where Mr. Rogers did once something a bit unkind, maybe he'd had a stressful day and once lost his temper with someone bugging him on the street. Had that happened once and it'd been heard about, people would be straight away judging, oh, clearly Mr. Rogers isn't actually a nice guy at all, he's quite rude, an angry man really, it was all an act. We'd be pulling him down despite all his kindness because of one small moment. As such, he almost has to be elevated to a superhuman level just to defend the idea that he's nice, if that makes sense. Like, our cynicism is so determined to bring down the best people that they'd have to literally never put a foot wrong and pretty much become a living saint just to deny us the chance to pull them down. And that makes me think about do-gooders, because as a culture we don't much like do-gooders, despite knowing how unfair it is of us to not like them. There's this village not far from where I live that has a group of old people who voluntarily set up a speed watch, by which I mean they have their own little speed cameras and they stand on the pavement holding them and they record the speeds of all the cars that go through the village. And if you've gone over the limit, they don't have any legal right to do anything, but they will record your number plate and send you a letter in the post telling you that you were speeding. And they kind of annoy me, which is totally unfair. I think I think if they want to do good, why can't they join charities? Why can't they donate to good causes or set up a trust to help people with illness or disabilities or mental health issues or something? Why not do something positive for the environment? Why not do any of that instead of just standing by the road, a part of the road that's not even near the school or anything, by the way, it's on the outskirts of the village? Why do that and just write down people's number plates and send them letters about it? But that's unfair of me because, for one, they might do other charity work as well. How could I know? Or maybe they don't, but they might have done if they weren't stuck in such a small village and, maybe they've got no means of transportation to any of the charity centres in nearby towns and stuff. And either way, it doesn't really matter because what they are doing is technically something good. They're stopping people speeding, which may save lives. I think there's better things they could be doing to help the world, but it's still a good thing. What right do I have to be annoyed at them for it? And also, someone once did die on that patch of road. I think about 20 years ago. I was still a little kid, so I can't remember if it's a car crash or someone got run over, but it was because of speeding. And those people who volunteered don't want that to happen again. That's a good thing. That's genuinely good of them. But for some reason, we tend to get our backs up about people doing good and being kind. I think that comes down partly to the fact it can make us feel like they're better than us. Maybe not in that Speedwatch example, but like Mr. Rogers, we don't often like the idea that people can be that kind because it makes us feel bad for not being that kind ourselves, So they kind of end up annoying us and feeding the more pessimistic side that wants to bring them down to our level. We don't believe we can reach up to their level, so we instead try to pull them down to ours. And the other reason is virtue signalling. We really get our backs up about virtue signalling, which is basically when people do good things that look good just to make themselves look good and to feel like a good person without actually really caring about the good they're doing. It's selfishness disguised as doing good. And maybe we could accuse our Speedwatch volunteers of that. It's not they're actually trying to save lives, but they just want to feel like they're doing something a bit good, and they want to wear high-vis uniforms and feel important with cameras and clipboards like they own the village. You could argue that, and I'd be hard-pressed to argue against it, but it's just very easy to accuse anyone doing good of being a virtue signaller, isn't it? Because on some level, it's probably always true, just a little bit of us, although doctors often are very selfless people, I suspect they do, deep down, all quite like feeling like the good guys who save lives. I mean, of course they'd like feeling like that. They don't brag about it, obviously, but they don't need to, because they're doctors. You already know that means they save lives and do a lot of good. And we like to accuse people of being virtue signallers because it's the easiest way to bring good people down to our level, I think. People like Lloyd would have loved to be able to say, Mr. Rogers is just pretending to be nice for the sake of TV, he's not actually nice, it's all an act, he's a virtue signaller. If Mr. Rogers was slightly less nice, still incredibly nice, but slightly less, people may have found a way to be able to say that and to bring him down. Then we'd all have one good less man we'd be able to look up to. It's stupid what we let our cynicism do to the world around us. And I was trying to think of any modern examples for something similar. And I don't know, you might disagree with this one, but could you say Greta Thunberg? Because here's a girl who wants to help the environment. So she makes rallying cries for action, and she doesn't use planes because of the carbon footprint, and I think she's a vegan for similar reasons. I might be wrong, I haven't read too much. And many people, some of you maybe, won't like her. I'm not here to argue because you could be right, I don't know. But she's criticised for being a virtue signaller who just wants to feel like she's doing good. I mean, again, it's hard to argue against accusations like that. It's difficult to, so we'll come back to that point in a minute. But another criticism that's thrown at her, a lot of people say if she really wants to help, she'd be in China protesting there, because China are the ones that hurt the environment the most. She should be making speeches to them. Or they say that the fact she doesn't take planes isn't good enough, because trains still have some carbon footprint, she uses them, that makes her a hypocrite. But isn't that argument exactly the same as me accusing the Speedwatch people for not doing charity work instead of their Speedwatch? I mean, logically Greta Thunberg couldn't do much if she went to China, because A, she doesn't speak Chinese, as far as I know, B, the Chinese would probably be more likely to listen to someone of their own nationality, and C, she'd probably get arrested. If she wants to do something about China, her best, most logical method is probably to exert public pressure on our world leaders in the hopes that they will exert their diplomatic pressure on China's president. That's the best hope. And the fact she does still take trains, yes, she's not a saint, but why should the fact she doesn't do everything perfect mean we should be pulling her down and denouncing her as a hypocrite and a bad person? You know, I mean, of course she's not perfect. Nobody is, and she's a teenage girl. Why should we judge her against the standards of sainthood? Why should we judge Mr. Rogers on that? And the third argument against her is one that makes the most sense, I think, to me. That you don't think her methods are the right way to go about climate change, and maybe you got a point there, you know? Maybe you do, I don't know. That's this point of this video isn't Greta Thunberg, really. Just, she's the most obvious modern example I could think of, because, I mean, yeah, perhaps you don't think her methods are right, and perhaps you think she is a virtue signaller. Is she still not trying to do something good regardless? Is that not better than it would be to do nothing like the rest of us do? I have no right to criticise or get annoyed at the Speedwatch people for not joining charities, because I don't volunteer for a charity myself. They're doing more good than I am, you know? Even if it annoys me at times, they're still trying to do something that is positive. Even when it's raining, they're still out there with their speed cameras. It just says a lot about our cynical side as a culture when a teenage girl wants to try and stand up to help the environment and we attack her for it. It says something about our cynical side as a culture when a kind man makes a TV show to help kids and we want to try and expose him as a bad person. Or in Scrooge's case, he looks out the window on Christmas morning, sees a world of people joyfully saying Merry Christmas to each other, and he wants to end Christmas. It says something, doesn't it? And that doesn't mean we're bad people at all. Obviously not. It just means we can be a bit cynical at times. All of us can. It's part of human nature. I just think it's good to remember it's not the only part of human nature. That sometimes people do good things, or at least try to do good things. We should check ourselves when we start to resent them, because that's not fair, when we start to think negatively on them. We should have the self-awareness to stop and think, yep, this is my cynicism taking over and making things worse. I should shut up. And on that note, I will shut up. Thanks for watching. Like the video if you enjoyed it. I know this is a slightly different one. These are just some thoughts I've been thinking about. So comment any thoughts of your own. Comment if you think I'm wrong or I've misunderstood or there's a point I've missed. Subscribe if you're new. And yeah, hopefully see you next time.